Revelation 1468. From the 12th of June 1940. Bondage of the soul. Intercession in love helps to redeem. It is an irresponsible act against the human soul if it is held in a certain bondage, that is, if it is prevented from higher development. And this is the case when the will of man turns exclusively to the earthly, when therefore this will is weakened by the adversary and therefore the soul is no longer able to express itself freely and unbound. This unfreedom of the will, however, is again its own fault. It is the consequence of self-conceit, which prevents man from turning to God in prayer for strength, thus, in short, a consequence of earthly life without prayer. For at the beginning of his earth task, man was given free will, which could dispose him to both good and evil. But he may also make use of prayer. He is free to ask for help at any time, and if he makes use of this prayer, the power to resist will also increase, thus the will is truly free and not bound by the power of the adversary. The prayerless man will always have less resisting power, he therefore surrenders himself to the force which wants to harm him, and the consequence is his soul getting into a completely unfree state, that it is bound to the earth, that it always does and wants to do what it is told to do by a bad power. It is in a bondage from which it can hardly free itself, also if it does not yet use prayer. Because it has also lost the knowledge of the grace of prayer, it is completely without help and exposed to the influence of evil, because it can no longer use its will in the right way. And such a wrongly directed will can only be effectively counteracted by love, if a loving being on earth or also in the beyond comes to the aid of such a forced soul and therefore sends up prayer to God on its behalf. The fetters of that soul will loosen, it will suddenly feel the power to resist in itself and willingly surrender to better forces, and this can bring about a change of thinking and will, which is expressed in a changed way of life. Souls who cannot find their way back to God by themselves, must receive a supply of willpower through intercession in love, if they are not to be lost without salvation. Since they cannot be compelled to think and want differently. And this intercession is a weapon that effectively fights the adversary. For it cancels his exclusive power over the soul. The soul feels the loosening of its fetters, and now also the will to escape this power completely, is awakened in it. It certainly feels weak, but desires help, which now can be offered to it. Because the desire for help is an unconscious prayer, which also finds hearing by the light beings wanting to help it to now direct the thoughts, so that man now also consciously makes use of prayer and so increases the power to resist, therefore can free himself from the state of bondage. Love for the fellow man can contribute in this way enormously much to the redemption of an erring soul. If it takes into account the completely weakened will and on its behalf, now lets the will become active to help that soul. The power of a prayer for the human soul is immense and the only means to redeem it from the power of the adversary. Amen.